Nolen was the number 2 seed coming into this top 8, but that's not good enough. Michael Tabler, the number 1 seed, he gets to choose to be on the player draw. I predict play.
I think you'll be right about that, and you know, interesting that we have the 1 and 2 seeds here, and they're off to a quick start. Michael has an island and a ponder. In Lauren's hand, we see a Jace at the front there, and a polluted delta. Flooded strand, a few fetch lands. So we'll see what he chooses to lead with. Leads with that polluted delta and just passing the turn. And from Michael, just see him draw and adds an island to the board. The hand of Force of Will. I think there was also a Merchant Scroll. Swamp, it looks like, drawn from Lauren. So quite a few lands, a Jace, and a white card towards the back of his hand. I think I also see a Spell Pierce. And he adds another blue fetch land, this time a Scalding Tarn. And over on Michael's side, we see a third land. And yeah, as we've talked about throughout the top 8, really important for High Tide to continue to play lands every turn. Combo deck based around those islands wants to keep developing. Lauren draws a Swords to Plowshares, not gonna really do much in this game. Michael has no creatures, so and not dealing Lauren damage, so Lauren's not even gonna be able to use it on his own guy. Maybe get tricky in that way.
A lot of pass.
Yep, draw go, which I think favors Michael, allowing him to build up his mana base.
I completely agree.
Yeah, Lauren in this game ideally looking to lay down some kind of threat early, like a Stoneforge Mystic, and doesn't have it this game.
For those of you who are just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan here with Ben Hayes. This is the Star City Games Live Open Series. We're in Cincinnati, Ohio, in the last match of the night. Whew. Lauren Nolen faces off against 4 lands from Michael Tabler's High Tide as he begins his 4th turn. He's going to need to put something on the table, get some disruption going. But, you know, if he taps down too much, he could just be wide open for Michael Tabler taking the game. So it's kind of a crazy little dance that he's engaged in here.
Yeah, we talked about, you know, High Tide not being one of the faster combo decks, but at this point, he is definitely in range in terms of how many lands he has. You know, as Adrian said, if Lauren taps down, Michael's definitely got enough islands in play at the very least to capitalize. We'll see if he has those spells. Looks like Lauren's passing here. We're going to see Michael activate that fetch land. You see Lauren with Tundra, Swamp, Flooded Strand, and Polluted Delta. 4 different lands facing off against 4 uniform islands over on Michael's side. And having all basic lands definitely comes in handy in this format. Not vulnerable to Wasteland, not vulnerable to something like Price of Progress that Michael's last round opponent had. And in Lauren's hand, we see a Spell Pierce, Brainstorm, a Jace. So he has some answers. He has a little bit of a way to filter, but pretty scared of committing, tapping too much mana. I think we're going to see this Brainstorm fired off. And Lingering Souls, Spell Pierce, and Snapcaster Mage. So we'll see what he chooses to put back. Shuffles a Swords to Plowshares to the front, puts it down face up, and puts it on the top of his deck. Shuffling it away. Some gamesmanship between Lauren and Michael, showing him that Swords to Plowshares.
Okay, so update from the field. Glenn Jones has let me know that these players right now are playing for pride. Now, in a elimination rounds version of tournaments, whoever's left can all agree to whatever split that they want. And the split that was agreed on is that Lauren Nolen will be the official winner, and Michael Tabler will get the trophy But right now, they're playing to see who is just going to be the better player here.
Yeah, so, looking to put on a good show. And we see Academy Runes come down for Loren. He has an engineered explosives in hand that he can use to clear out any candelabras, but doesn't have much else in the way of permanence on Michael's side.
Turnabout from Michael Tabler targeting Loren Nolen. This summons out a Spell Pierce, one of 2 Spell Pierces in Loren's deck. There are very few cards that Loren can use as a instant to interact with Michael. So Michael with a Merchant Scroll, Michael in pretty good shape right here. That turnabout kind of a duress.
Yeah, definitely serving similar role. And you see Michael pick up a High Tide. And Loren with a handful of cards, but before sideboard, not many of them super useful in this matchup. A lot of answers to things that Michael is just not presenting. So it looks like we may have to break that pad out again if, oh no, Michael just choosing to, looks like, pass the turn.
Loren Nolen here, many different cards in his hand.
Both players taking a look at their graveyards. I believe Loren has I think I saw a Snapcaster Mage. Yeah, shuffles it to the front there, so Loren considering maybe a Snapcaster and then a Brainstorm for some value. Needing to use that fetch land to get a second blue mana. Ideally you want to fetch after your Brainstorm, but in this case he has to use it to cast the Brainstorm and the Snapcaster if that's the route he's going to go with. And we see Academy Runes and Underground Sea tapped for a Snapcaster Mage, and that Tundra tapped to flashback a card a little bit off camera, and it looks like a Brainstorm. Picking up 3 lands.
Not the most exciting pickup, but you know what? It's a bonus pickup since Tiago Chan, the Snapcaster Mage, is making it happen.
Yep, and at least one of them appears to be a fetch land. So Loren able to shuffle away one of those lands that's presumably still on top. We see a couple Swords to Plowshares on the bottom of his deck, right where Loren would hope they are. And Underground Sea coming out for Loren. So the Snapcaster Mage represents, the beginning of a clock for Loren, but still gonna give Michael a lot of time if that's all he presents. See Lingering Souls, Jace, Spell Pierce in the hand of Loren Nolen. And another Snapcaster Mage as well. So
in for 2.
Yeah, it's in for 2. Loren with the option here of leaving open 4 mana to Spell Pierce, Snapcaster, Spell Pierce, or trying to commit something more to the board like a Jace, but leaving himself a little more vulnerable.
Cunning Wish. This is a card I usually like to stop from happening. The setup is too good. Having a Pact of Negation in hand, too good.
Yeah, and Michael here looks to be tapped low enough that this Spell Pierce is gonna be used effectively against an opponent who, has 6 lands in play, might not have had many other opportunities to use that Spell Pierce in such a, effective way. We see at least
that's the 2 Spell Pierces now in Loren Nolen's grave.
Yep.
No other Spell Pierces in his deck.
You see a Force of Will and a High Tide in Michael's hand, and he's just thinking about what his options are here. And again, something that Adrian's mentioned about this matchup, Loren's answers, a lot of them are sorcery speed. So if we get to the point where High Tide's happening, Time Spirals are happening, the cards that Loren draws, not going to be as important as cards that might be drawn in a deck with more instant speed answers. And starting off with a High Tide. And we see a Snapcaster Mage in Loren's hand that he's maybe considering.
Well, I mean, right now, with Michael Tabler opening up with this High Tide, he's basically saying, it's time. And Loren, he has a lot of islands out there. His Tundra is an island, his Underground Sea is an island, his other Tundra is also an island. That means if this High Tide does resolve, he is going to have access to 8 mana. Unfortunately for him, if it resolves, and it does, it'll be 12 mana for Michael Tabler. And we can see the pad comes out. We've seen this pad before. The tide is at 2. He's going off.
Yep. And we see, we do see that tide starting up. And fetch land cracked from Michael. And we'll see how far Michael can go with this. Oh, just goes for a time spiral right here. I believe I also saw a Force of Will in his hand.
This is one of the best ways to go about it, actually. The reason being that if you just go the High Tide time spiral, you actually get to have this huge untap. So your mana amount, I mean, did he, let's wait a second. Let's see if he sees to tap those 2
lands. Like this is already resolving.
It's already resolved.
Too late. Too late.
Too late for that extra 4 mana that could have been in his pool.
Yep. A lot of opportunities, a lot of times when you can tap mana during the resolution of a spell, not one of them. And we'll see what both players come up with these new 7. And as Adrian mentioned, all the non-basic islands on Loren's side are going to be producing 2 mana, doing double work here.
Unfortunately for him, he does not have all islands, and also, unfortunately for him, the amount of abilities he has to interact as an instant are much less than Michael.
Yeah, Michael outnumbering him in the island count just a little bit here. So Michael with a fresh hand, looks like a Brainstorm at the top of that hand that he may choose to lead off with. We do see a Brainstorm. And 3 cards. You see another High Tide shuffle to the front of Michael's hand.
And Loren packs it up, packs it in. He knows what's up.
Yeah, not interested in playing that one out for another 20 or 30 minutes to see how Michael chooses to finish him off.
And I appreciate that, Loren Nolen. If you watch this replay, thank you for doing the scoops there to go to game 2 and 3. Now, also though, after every game 1 in our top 8, we make sure to give away a prize to all of our, potential prize to our viewers. We give away 3 free months of Star City Games Premium during the quarterfinals, 6 free months of Star City Games Premium during the semifinals, and a full year of Star City Games Premium during all of our finals. How this works, the hashtag, you can see it right there, hashtag SCG Premium, will ask you a trivia question. If you have the correct answer to this trivia question, you will be amongst a number of other people, one of whom will be selected for this prize. You need to make sure you have that hashtag SCG Premium in order to be selected, though, or to be eligible to be selected, rather. So, this one, I'm going to throw you all a huge, huge softball, and that is this. In addition to our wonderful event here, the Star City Games Open Series Legacy event, another event wrapped up today that produced a Pro Tour champion. Name what Star City Game, Team Star City Games player is the Pro Tour champion. If you don't know the answer to this one, you are not paying enough attention to Magic, but that's called a softball. Enjoy it, folks. Name the Team Star City Games player who is the Pro Tour champion, and you're welcome, everybody. Star City Games, we're happy to make sure we give it an easy shot to you. Another opportunity for easiness, Grand Prix Charlotte. We're going to be giving away a ton of free stuff there, so you should make sure you make it there as well. in terms of this premium. Hashtag SCG Premium. We're going to go to our sideboards right now for Loren Nolen and Michael Tabler.
And we see on Michael's side something that we saw in the semifinals, this Cunning Wish sideboard. A lot of one-ofs, 2 wipe away, and the rest is singletons. So, you know, some of these may come in. They may be cards that he's not as interested in wishing for. In particular, we might see that Spell Pierce come in against the spell-heavy deck that Loren's running, and I think that might be the only one coming in. We might see Flusterstorm come in, although I think Michael may want to leave that there as a wish option for a 1-mana counterspell besides Pact of Negation.
On Loren Nolen's side, there are arguments for, I would say, 13 of Loren Nolen's sideboard cards. The Geist of St. Traft would allow him to actually put a reasonable clock on the table and shift into an aggro control role. The Relic of Progenitus, just another way to nibble away at the graveyard, and also as a card filtering card, he can get rid of it later on. The Surgical Extraction, also another way to disrupt the combo as it goes off. Disenchant, one of the weakest cards he could bring in. He might not bring this in, but it does kill Candelabras. Spell Pierce, Thoughtseize Duress, Force of Will, all of those are straight up great choices. And then the Sword of Feast and Famine can totally nibble away at the hand of Michael Tabler. 13 cards is a lot of cards, but I actually see good reasons to consider all those 13 cards, and he does have a lot of dead cards. Supreme Verdict is 1, Swords to Plowshares, that's 4 of them. Vindicate is a pretty slow way to answer a Candle. He's still at only 6 cards there. So Supreme Verdict, we already said. I mean, he has to cut a lot to get all of those in, so he's probably not going to bring them all in. But those are all of his options, those 13 cards.
Yeah, and game 2 underway. We see a couple of Force of Wills in Loren's hand, 1 land for each player so far. Loren draws a Jace, choosing to crack that Polluted Delta. We can actually hear both players laughing from across the hall. So, pretty good natured about this game. Looks like a Tundra coming out for Loren Nolen. And Brainstorm Shuffle to the front of his hand. He just does choose to cast that. And Brainstorm and Fetch Land and what looks like a Surgical Extraction, I believe, picked up there.
Pretty solid little hand.
Yeah. So another Brainstorm, that Fetch Land to shuffle away whatever he's not interested in, and 2 Force of Wills. Pretty big game against Michael's deck.
Now these 2 players have risen above 277 other competitors here today. You can see Loren Nolen here, hoping to be the champion of, well, he's going to be the official champion, but this grudge match, so to speak, this duel to see who is the better wizard.
Yeah, hoping to come out on top in this. We see Michael using a Merchant Scroll, turning that into a High Tide. Play we've seen quite a few times in this match and in the semifinals. Merchant Scroll usually acting as additional High Tides, unless he's already going off. Then it can be, a Blue Sun Zenith or whatever he needs at the time. And Loren Nolen with a Surgical Extraction, Lingering Souls, what looks like another Brainstorm, and a couple of Force of Wills. Gonna deploy Stoneforge Mystic and try to get a clock on the table more quickly than he did in game 1.
The players and spectators who are left in the room having a good laugh about the match over there. We see Ponder from Michael Tabler. Shuffles away the top of the library.
Yep, looking for, something that wasn't there. And Michael draws, picks up a Force of Will, and casts his second Ponder. That quick shuffle through his hand, I'm not sure Michael has a third land. looks at 3 shuffles, maybe looking for an island.
Like most of these high tide lists, he is running very low on lands. I know I've seen between 16 and 18 lands in most of the high tide lists, and they plan on being able to get to these lands with Brainstorm, Ponder, Preordain, and then other shuffle effects to make those cards even better at finding new cards. And usually that's sufficient, but it does mean that sometimes it can be a real struggle to get those early mana.
Yeah, so he is going to pass the turn without playing a 3rd land. We're going to see Lauren Nolen, wow, draw Geist of Saint Traft. And I don't think... Okay, just going to pass the turn.
I think what he's going to do here is just ride the Sword of Feast and Famine and have that be his plan.
Yep, activates Stoneforge Mystic, gets that sword down. Very good card against High Tide.
Now, unless Michael Tabler has a Snap or a Wipe Away in hand, we're going to start to see some very cruel stuff happening with that Sword of Feast and Famine.
Yep, we'll see if this connects, and it does. Michael discards a Time Spiral. Lauren untaps those lands and considers his options.
I would be unsurprised if Lauren just passes the turn back. He did something similar to this a second ago, preferring just to allow himself to have access to the disruptive power of his hand for now.
Yeah, he does have a threat that he could deploy in that Geist, but yeah, last turn choosing to play it safe. We'll see whether he continues to do that or goes a little more aggressive.
Well, last turn also actually preferring this sort of Feast and Famine action. So yeah, you are right that with all of those Force of Wills, it would not be unreasonable. It would put him a little bit more risk, but it wouldn't be unreasonable for him to tap down.
Yeah, it looks like flipping through there, he may also have at least a Spell Pierce, so...
I like keeping up a Spell Pierce. That sounds exciting to me.
Looks like he chose just to pass the turn. And I think I also saw a Snapcaster Mage, so we may see that used for just for a little bit of value, the way we did in Game 1. And Michael,
here it comes. He's going to go for it.
Huh. Just fires off that High Tide here against a pretty full hand from Lauren. Now, you know, Michael doesn't know that Lauren has those that Spell Pierce and those 2 Force of Wills, so not knowing how dangerous this is.
The tide is high, and he's trying to go off.
And we see another High Tide in his hand as well, and what looks like a turnabout, so we'll see how many counter spells he can draw out from Lauren in this turn. Pact of Negation resolves, countering Spell Pierce. That's very important. The Pact of Negation wasn't countered. Lauren let the Pact of Negation resolve, meaning it's going to trigger on Michael's next upkeep if we get there. Force of Will and Force of Will back.
We see a storm count currently of, I believe, 5.
And another Force of Will from Nolen. Yeah, Nolen left with just a couple of cards, but holds that High Tide off. Yep.
Wow, and then with all of this, Michael Tabler also used Force of Wills, so this sort of Feast and Famine is going to be brutal.
Yeah, going to take some of the few cards that he has left. I think we're going to see... Lauren has a choice here. He has a Surgical Extraction, Geist, and Force of Will. He can choose to keep that Geist in hand and feed it to the Force of Will, or he can deploy the Geist to try to end this game quickly. Looks like he is going to add that Geist, swing in.
Boom.
Gets rid
Ouch.
of Turnabout.
Ouch. And is that going to be all of the High Tides?
We see another High Tide in Michael's hand. And,
Michael's like, that's all I got.
Yeah,
let's go to game number 3. And Lauren gives a happy face there, like, oh, gotcha.
Yeah, as with game 1, both players, when they realized their opponent was in a position to win and it was just gonna potentially drag out, you know, scooping it up, saving us all a bit of time.
Now, Lauren Nolen is no stranger to success on the Star City Games Open Series and Invitational circuit, and one of the things that means is he knows how to fight this war, and so you saw some really precision uses of the Surgical Extraction, some very cautious moves, and then changing over to aggression when it made sense. Lauren Nolen played that out really well.
Yeah, holding back, knowing that he wanted to set up that sort of Feast and Famine, start working on Michael's hand, force Michael to pull the trigger because he knew he wasn't going to beat the repeated hits from Sword of Feast and Famine. dropped those Force of Wills. Both players' hands went pretty low, but Loren followed up with a Geist, and that closed out the game.
If you're just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan here with Ben Hayes, and this is the Star City Games Open Series. It's day 2. It is the Legacy portion. Still my favorite constructed format. I'm not going to lie, I do love myself some Legacy. I'm not sure if you keep decks built these days. I have 3 Legacy decks built. I'm trying to rebuild another one, and I did not bring any of them with me this weekend, unfortunately. Usually I like to have them, play as many pickup games as I can at these events, but just was not able to actually rebuild my decks. Mostly they were picked apart for their pieces, for Modern and for other things. So
yeah, I try to keep a few around, although I know what you're talking about with those pieces getting added in other places.
Usually cards like Scalding Tarn and all that, you know.
Yep, those fetch lands, premium in a lot of different formats. We see Island and Candelabra for Michael.
Okay. And Inquisition of Kozilek from Loren Nolen. We reveal a Turnabout Force of Will Ponder Time Spiral, and there's an island in hand as well.
Yep, so looks like he is going to take the only card he can.
And, that Ponder is a very valuable Ponder that got stripped away there.
Yeah, we saw in some of Michael's other games really using those Ponders and Preordains in consecutive turns to make sure that he was hitting all of his land drops. He does draw a fetch land here, so he's going to be okay for a little bit, but going to need some action if he's going to be able to go off in this game. We see from Loren an Underground Sea, and chooses to play a Scalding Tarn and sacrifice that. This signals to me that we may be seeing Stoneforge Mystic. I haven't seen it in his hand, but Loren sacrificing this land on his turn makes me think he's going to use the mana right now. And still searching. Yep, just shortcutting a little bit there, searching out the land, searching out the Sword of Feast and Famine for when he drops that Stoneforge Mystic that we see.
I appreciate that interaction, just being allowed to do that. We see the 3rd land here from Michael Tabler.
Yep, and Caracas drawn for Loren. So a hand of Caracas, Underground Sea. Looks like he just flipped past a couple of Force of Wills, and just like game 2, Loren passes a turn, ready to just drop down that sort of Feast and Famine, start getting those hits in, force Michael to make a move, then unload all of his counter magic and say, you know, is this enough? And that big exchange, that big counter magic exchange, dropping both players to very few cards, is advantageous for Michael with his Sword of Feast and Famine.
To Loren with his... Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
To Loren.
we knew what you meant.
Yeah. Michael has no Sword of Feast and Famine. Even if he did, no creatures to put it on.
And the 4th land, 4 mana versus 4 mana. Equip.
And that Stoneforge Mystic.
Discards a Force of Will. Ouch. And the 2 cards, or 2 mana come back.
And Loren really with a stacked hand of Spell Pierce at 2 Force of Wills and what looked to be a couple other blue cards. Look like 2 Spell Pierces, a Vendilion Click, and 2 Force of Wills. Can't really ask for much better in this matchup. Potential to have 3 counter spells or cast that Vendilion Click and still have 2 Force of Wills.
If you did not experience the joy of Clawblade, you are seeing echoes of it right now. Vendilion Click.
Yeah, choosing to leave up a blue here. Spell Pierce in hand.
Time Spiral, Ponder, Turnabout, Island?
I believe that's an island, yeah.
Looks to me like Loren Nolen is going to, unless Michael does something really significant and exciting here, looks to me as though Loren's going to take this one. Look at that hand.
Yeah, he's developed a pretty quick clock here, and points at the Ponder. Says get rid of that one. You can have 1 mystery card instead of 3.
Is that a High Tide that was just drawn?
And not sure. May have been. There's an island added to the board.
That means Turnabout, Ponder, and Mystery.
Another Spell Pierced run for Loren.
Oh my God!
So
Look at that. Loren flashes
shows
it.
the hand,
That
and
is
that's
it.
game.
Michael Tabler, he concedes, and Loren Nolen wins the prize for best wizard in the room. 279 players. Wow, that was pretty awesome there, and. Michael Tabler and Loren Nolen did do a prize split at the beginning of this match. Loren Nolen was going to come away as the official winner no matter what. Michael Tabler was going to be the trophy holder. And the thing about it is, though, they had to fight it out, the grudge match, see who was the top wizard. Loren Nolen, 2-1 over High Tide. Now, we do have another winner as well, though.